Hello, my name is Michael Lewrick, and actually it's a pleasure for me to be here today. I'm actually living in Switzerland, and by coincidence I became an author because I wrote a nice book 4 years ago. It was called Design Thinking Playbook, and actually it was so famous that a lot of people actually thought it's nice ideas and concepts would like to put forward, and now it's translated in 34 languages. So what I like to talk today about is about business ecosystem design. And I came across this topic already like 15 years ago. I was studying at Edinburgh University, and I was specializing on innovation clusters. And innovation ecosystems are one of the hot topics at the moment. A lot of people look into how to collaborate with startup companies in an ecosystem. But we also have, in this context, data ecosystems. So how to apply big data analytics across industries, across countries, and trying to find like a better solution and value propositions out of a bigger data lake. The next wave actually about ecosystems came along with everything related to blockchain solutions. So when I started like 5 years ago talking about blockchain, my company, and this time I was working at a telecommunication company in Switzerland, Swisscom, no one really did understand what the technology is all about. So I got a lot of questions about how does it work? What's the difference between internet and a blockchain solution? Because people did not get the point about a decentralized solution. And after a while, I realized it's not really the technology you have to explain. You have to explain how an ecosystem works. Because in a decentralized world, you like to put different assets together to create like one common value proposition. And this really was the trigger saying, we have to build a model to put together a minimum viable ecosystem. So I start phrasing the term minimum viable ecosystem 5 years ago, and actually it was in the Design Thinking Playbook. It was the first time we put a framework together how to design such a minimum viable ecosystem. So looking into these things, so the book and the good news, we have a French version as well. It's out now for 8 weeks. It's out of Pearson, and so it's not only the English available at the market at the moment. And I like to start really with this slide because this was actually my first presentation I did for the board of directors at the Swiss telecommunication company saying, we investing hundreds of million francs into cloud solution at the moment, building large cloud infrastructure, building application clouds, but there's something coming along, and this tsunami, this digital tsunami will change a little bit how we work, how we interact, and how we might have a different kind of market position. And you see these little kind of tiny blockchain sharks, I would say, they might eat us sooner or later, because at the situation 5 years ago, a lot of our platforms were centralized. We had like traditional vendor relationships to create a value proposition out, but no one was really thinking about how a decentralized world might look like. So the trigger points in this model was really how to come from a decentralized ecosystem enabled by ecosystem, to a more broader idea of bringing assets together. And based on this, basically, I thought there might be like kind of different ways, we look into ecosystems. And we see on the left side, this is a traditional way how we work and how we did business for the last 200 years. This was like a value streams coming together, and basically had like a vendor or two, and you're creating the value over the actors in the system. So the next part was all about markets. So you're creating like a marketplace, and we see it at the moment. So a lot of fintechs and banks working on this kind of marketplace approach, but still, you have like a centralized platform, and you're connecting all these players. So you basically say, I tell you what are the values in my system, I tell you what are the rules in my system, and you basically can connect to us on a centralized platform. So the next wave, basically, is like really a decentralized ecosystem, and then always thinking stops because people don't know how to build like a decentralized system. And as I was involved in the blockchain space for the last 5 years, I have seen in 2016 and 2017 all these initial coin offerings. And I started actually a company out of Swisscom at this time, Swisscom Blockchain Limited. And the idea was to do consultancy for enterprise blockchain solution and for ICOs. And we got like every day 100 white papers saying we like to do initial coin offering. So 99% of them were just trying to get money out of the market. And what we see at the moment out of these 2,200 coins and tokens, probably 98% have no value. There might be like 2% that really put like assets behind the token, and they thought about the ecosystem. And this is what I'm trying to the point I'm trying to make is that it's not just the technology you have to be able to create, build, and develop, but it's more like the system around. And for my blockchain speech, I usually use like a cow and a cat with a straw. And this was a little bit the idea of all these startup companies trying to find like the direct way without intermediaries, disrupting the entire world by creating a new blockchain solution. But as you know, after like 5 years in the blockchain space, you need all these other parties also to create like a unique system. So what I'm saying is a little bit not just technology, it's more like beyond digital to create something. And when we look how we create now these kind of ecosystems, we always start with design thinking because there's a problem to solve. And in the beginning, always we see many people go into solution mode, saying, there might be something I like to disrupt, and say, well, I have a great solution, I have great ideas to make it better, but you have to go really back and see what is the root cause and what is the problem you like to solve. And then basically we do basic research to solve the problem. We started co-creation with different kind of players. We use lean startup methodology and of course business ecosystem design, and finally trying to scale solutions. And actually the entire framework came together as a problem to growth and scale framework. So we say, in the beginning, start with what is the problem definition, look into design thinking, apply this lean startup methodology, and put also a lot of efforts in creating the ecosystem. And when I'm talking now to companies, they say, well, actually, we have already an ecosystem. We're talking to startups companies. We have this innovation network with universities. But if I ask them always, do you have like a value proposition you like to create together? And you might like to change your market role in this ecosystem and create something unique. They stop thinking because everything from the old traditional world into like a more decentralized ecosystem world needs to be like transparent. So they have to open up what are my value streams, how can I basically contribute to the entire system, and the most important part, every action in the system needs to have benefits, because without any benefits, no ecosystem will survive. And when you're going back to nature, same thing, you probably, as an animal, you leave the place you live at the moment if you don't have any benefits, like water, other pets you can eat, etc. So the idea is really behind creating this minimum viable ecosystem. And I just give an example from my old company, from Swisscom. This is very unique about what you should not do creating ecosystems. And there was the idea of creating an application called I/O. And I/O was basically a concept, what we know nowadays as WeChat or WhatsApp. And we spent 40 million francs to build like a really solid application. So the first mistake was then 8 years ago, saying, well, basically we not put it on the market because we have a lot of SMS revenues, for short messages. And this was at this time, really driving our business. There was a lot of roaming involved, many other revenues, so we didn't do it. So the next step was we were saying, okay, this should be limited to our customers. So we don't like to give it like to Vodafone customers or Orange customers. We just launch it for our own clients in Switzerland. And this was the next thing. We thought about, well, we don't like to have it in entire Europe or globally. We like to have this for Switzerland. So you can imagine Switzerland has like 8 million people in total, and there's no way to scale. And then they realized basically, wow, WhatsApp is coming along and WeChat is becoming really successful. So what does a successful company do? They spend a lot of money in advertising. So they were hiring Tina Turner for a lot of money, saying, you know, I'm now connected to the world. Wrong message, because it was all about application running in Switzerland. And then basically we got a lot of buzz in the market, and about 4 to 5 telco companies in Europe were saying, well, can we have a license of this application? And what did my company say? No, of course not. It's just for our clients in Switzerland. And you see, basically everything went wrong creating any kind of ecosystem, because of all it was just limited on your own clients. Second of all, you don't like to scale globally, you're not using network effects, and then basically just putting marketing out will not solve the problem. So after like 3 years trying, you know, of course, WhatsApp was very successful, and WeChat in Asia, you know, was like also a big competitor also for parts in Europe. So basically what I'm saying is, you can try to build something central, and you use like the old thinking of product launches, but in the end of the day, you know, there might be things happening differently if you like to be successful in an ecosystem play. So, so just put in comparison WeChat on another slide, and they did it differently. And they were really thinking about a minimum viable ecosystem and putting like killer applications up front. So if you know the WeChat story, that like one use case, ordering taxis in Beijing, you know. And if you've been to Asia on a rainy day and you like to get a taxi, in the old days this was really hard to get. And they were thinking, okay, why not putting like kind of a function in the chat and you can order a taxi. And this really helped them to create like a large population within the big cities, and later on, actually, they combined it with appointments you need for the doctor and organizing your entire life. And for the taxi stories, they did also something very nice a couple of years ago. They realized also the pain from the taxi drivers, because usually what's happened in China, you know, the taxi driver goes home, and what he has earned over the day, he has to give to his wife. You know, that's a big pain point for taxi drivers. So they installed a crypto wallet within WeChat, and that was actually the trigger to putting a crypto wallet into the WeChat application. And they got the money over a Bitcoin account, and they didn't have to give the money back to the wife when they came home. So it's just building up like kind of benefits for all the actors in the systems helps a lot to create like stable and well-defined ecosystems. And WeChat that did it for many kind of ideas they had, and they were really going into iterations, putting things together, going into the next iteration, you know, trying how it scales, and they had also a couple of things that didn't work out so well, so they created like new applications, and they came like now one of the biggest chat providers in Asia, looking into this kind of model. So what I'm saying a little bit about how this evolved, we know from the past red ocean and blue ocean strategy. So if you like to be really successful in an ecosystem play, it's more like a black ocean strategy. And when we now look back again to everything happened in the blockchain market and the initial coin offering market, all of them, all the tries to create ecosystem have been really looking into being a black ocean, but they have not put money and thought into how to organize and design such an ecosystem. So basically, the model then I was testing over the last years, and this started then first with the idea of I/O and the learnings out of these things. Second of all, about this blockchain world and everything is decentralized. And now I'm applying it actually for marketplaces and blockchain solution. It's really that you do the design thinking up front. You start with the MVP. So you start in this model with your minimum viable product, and then you go into like 3 loops, you know. And the first loop is really trying to find out who are the actors in the system. You look who's now interacting with this kind of of business, who's interacting with which kind of value streams, and then basically you organize these things on a landscape. The next step is really to look how the relationship is going between all these parties, and then you put this really on paper and look how all these things come together. And this initial stage is quite important. Then you identify, who's involved, and what are really the key drivers in every kind of actor, to be connected to your offer you like to establish. And I have a nice example. So I tried one ecosystem approach in the healthcare industry, and this was putting the e-prescription on a blockchain. And I don't know how it works here in Canada, but the European system is the doctors basically having a sheet of paper, so writing down what kind of medicine you get, and then you go to the pharmacy, and the pharmacy is trying to give you the medication. Usually they can't not read the handwriting, and they call the doctor asking, what kind of medicine should I give to the patient. And if this is done, usually there's a lot of manual work to collect all the paper, get it back to the health insurance companies, and get the reimbursement of the money. So you can imagine now putting this on an end-to-end digital automated way of working, and we created a blockchain solution, an MVP blockchain solution to go into this market. And we realized very quickly in designing this ecosystem that not all the players have benefits. So, for example, all the doctors were saying, I have no need for any digital solution. I write it down on a sheet of paper. It takes me like 1 minute of work, and I don't care about anyone else. So this was the first bottleneck in designing this ecosystem, saying, so maybe the first thought is you give money to the doctor, saying you get 10 francs, every time you use a digital solution. But they're saying, well, for 10 francs, basically, I will not do anything. So this was not really the incentive going forward. The next part was involving like pharma companies, and saying, they have a lot of money. They like to get in touch with the patients. They like to get in touch with doctors, and they like to get in touch with pharmacies. So, but also this path was not working because it's not allowed to have a direct path from the pharmaceutical company to the patient, and also not to the doctor to influence them in anything they prescribe to the patients. So also this value stream was then not in discussion anymore, and we were left like just with these kind of 4 actors in the system to create something. And finally, we said, okay, there must be something else we can give back to the doctors. And we say, okay, when we have all the health data, we can basically give some kind of recommendations, out of a big data analytics effort, and come back to them with what they should prescribe to their patients. And at the same time, they get a history of all the prescriptions from other doctors. And then this was a different story. So saying, okay, this makes sense, and I get a little bit more information about these things. It was really the starting point for a proof of concept, putting an e-prescription on a blockchain. So you see the initial period about thinking value streams and which kind of actors, which kind of benefits are included are quite important, to define how ecosystem might look like. And then, of course, it's really the idea about the multidimensional view of the business models. And I'm saying so because if you like to initiate any kind of ecosystem, business ecosystem, you have to think about all the business models, all the players involved. Just coming back with the example about e-prescription, of course we were saying, look, we have to give something to the doctors. What are the benefits for the pharmaceutical companies? And we were creating basically all the business model for all the actors, saying that's how we like to convince you and onboard you in the system. And there are a lot of large companies out there. They do already think this multidimensional view of business model. And one is really Amazon in the B2B context. So if you go back to Amazon asking for a cloud solution as a large provider, and this is also for my former role at a telecommunication company, was in Seattle talking to them, and they were saying, if you spend $100,000 in our cloud product, you get $500,000 out. Because they presented to me like 4 to 5 business models, how I can make money out of it. And this same comes to like business ecosystem design. You have to be creative, about the business model of all the actors, telling them how they make money in your system, to convince them, and onboard them on your system. Otherwise, no one will stay in this kind of ecosystem you like to create. Then the next step is really about the realization loop and looking into the minimum viable ecosystem. So I usually start then with only selected players in the system. So coming back to the healthcare part and e-prescription, I started with 2 doctors, 4 patients, 1 insurance company, and a couple of other actors in this small environment, and I was not going full scale. So my proof of concept was with a limited amount of actors, trying to see how they interact, how the value streams are going, before we actually come now to the point of scaling the entire solution. And this is also a little bit the idea, out of the lean startup world, saying, not going full scale, look for any kind of killer application, for example, here in the healthcare sector, try it out with some actors, and if it's really working after a couple of iterations and fine-tune everything, scale the entire solution. So business ecosystem design is more like art. You really have to be creative and do iteration building these things, and that's why I'm always so saying, the design thinking mindset helps you a lot to creating these kind of systems. And on the other hand, sometimes it becomes really complex. And this is actually just a simplified illustration of the Apple ecosystem, but you can imagine having probably then 500, 600 players in your system, having like 8, 9, 10, 50 different market roles, and it becomes really like a large system. So this is quite complex. But I think it's important to visualize, to say really how things are come together. And you see, for example, how actually everything is connected within the Apple system to create values then for the client with a strong value proposition, but also you see all the benefits for the actors in the system. So this is something, I really can encourage, look into these kind of visualization in building these ecosystems. And finally, big companies like Amazon and Apple, I think they participate in this kind of space for a long time. So in the end of the day, I was saying it's beyond digital. It's not all about digital platforms, because also for the talks for the last 2 days I've been to this event, it was really talking about rebuilding this great artificial intelligence platform, rebuilding this great big data platform. But yeah, it's right, and I think you can really build a lot of this technology, but I really encourage you to look first into the business ecosystem, and sometimes it's more important to know the decision makers within these companies working with you on a later stage before you're building any kind of digital platform or application. So basically we have like 3 layers saying, look into the decision makers, look into the teams of the other companies, try to co-create with them, and then basically see how you align with them on the business model side, and later build everything on the technology. It's also the story about, as I mentioned before, with all these initial coin offerings, they were all of them focusing on blockchain as a core solution and not looking into this ecosystem design. All right. There's another kind of nice framework to use actually to building these kind of ecosystems. So we put together a little canvas we usually use in our workshops, saying, there is a design, redesign in the middle of the canvas. You have on the left side really how to create like a value proposition, and you go into all these value streams, and over the iterations you get like probably 5 to 10, sometimes 15 or 20 different kind of models how the ecosystem might look like, and finally you come up, if everything goes right, with a stable concept you like to test with a minimal ecosystem in the market. So key learnings out of business ecosystem design. First of all, the awareness about it. Look which kind of actors might help to create a new value proposition and how you like to interact with them. Second of all, start with a minimum viable ecosystem and not go full scale. So it's always like limited resources, having like money at hand, it's great, but spend it wisely and do like this first round of iteration with limited players. and later on, if this is stable, go really into a scalable solution. And of course, managing your ecosystem, you have to work in the system, but you also sometimes you have to change the system to be successful. And of course, it's all about system thinking and design thinking, because you need both things. You know, you have on one side really the complexity and applying kind of complex thinking about systems, and the second part you look into the value proposition and create like something for humans. So the customer comes at one side and the large system on the other side. And sometimes over the process designing these ecosystems, you have to change your mindset all the time, you know. So sometimes you're on the customer perspective, and then you're on the complex system way of thinking. And this takes a little bit of practice and efforts to go into this kind of mindset. But later on, you know, it really helps to create like a solid system. And finally, it's like a new mindset and thinking into this kind of black ocean that you really like to disrupt the entire industry and saying, you know, we are the best ecosystem out there, really helps later on to survive. All right. Thank you very much. Great.